Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, I have been reliably informed on Twitter.com that I'm a hater. So I guess it's going okay, but could be could be better in terms of respect and love from my colleagues on the Ohio State beat.
Well, Tom, why don't you explain why you are a hater who hates and hates a lot?
Well, our buddy Wyatt from Buckeye Sports Bulletin did a kind of a poll of the Ohio State beat writers to talk to 35 people in the Ohio State beat. Asked them a whole bunch of questions about the season. What's the record going to be? What's the rank going to be heading into the college football playoff? Will they win the national championship? And then bet, who's going to have the most receiving yards, who can have the most sacks, just that kind of stuff. Just very basic, sort of ideas on how the beat on the whole thinks the season's going to shake out. And I sent him my answers, I don't know, a week or so ago, just didn't think much about it. And the results came out on Thursday. And of the 35 people, the first question, Ohio State's record through 9 games. And the pie chart looks like, the meme where it's like the answers are yes, and then yes, but in blue. And it's like, it's almost all red. And there's just a little sliver where it's a different color. And it's like, yeah, that's what it looks like. 34 of the 35 people who voted predicted Ohio State to go 9-0. Only one single solitary person picked Ohio State to lose a game this year. Gerd, you'll never guess who that person was.
Was it you?
Look, I don't know. A lot of people were yelling things. I'm not really sure. I think this is a good time to remind everyone. My overall philosophy on predicting season records is it's stupid to pick people to go undefeated because there's way too much stuff that can go wrong during a season. Even a team that's favored to win every game by 10 points is going to lose one of those games at some point because too much crap goes wrong. That's doubly true if you're playing in, a pandemic. And there's just all it takes is Justin Fields to get sick the wrong week, and boom, all of a sudden this team looks real different. So I think overall my takeaway is you're welcome to everyone else because now you won't all get memed if Ohio State does lose a game, and it won't be like, when College Game Day has, 6 different people picking a game and they all pick it wrong. Now I just saved everyone else from getting memed if Ohio State loses a game. You're welcome.
So who are they going to lose to? Mr. Genius Know-It-All?
Yeah, here's the thing. He asked, so I put down at Penn State. I think they're probably about a 25% chance to actually lose at Penn State. I would not pick them to lose that game, but I think there's a 25% chance they lose to Penn State and a 15-20% chance they lose to Michigan, and like a 10% chance that that the wrong people are sick or hurt and they get caught by Indiana. Overall it adds up to, that's probably less than 50-50 that they really do go 9-0. And, they could always lose to Wisconsin or Minnesota in the Big Ten championship game. Like you can add it up. And on the whole, I think mathematically they're less than 50-50 to actually go 9-0, but more than 50-50 to win every individual game. So I put down at Penn State, but you could pick any of about 4 games out of a hat.
So you think Ohio State is going to be 500 after 2 games? You don't think they can beat Penn State?
I mean, look.
You think James Franklin is better than Ryan Day?
I think that I have inadvertently undone all of the goodwill that I've built up with the Buckeye Scoop Buckeye Scoop audience over the past few months, just with this one thing. So, well,
you think Sean Clifford is better than Justin Fields?
Well, yes, that's obvious. I mean, come on. You don't?
Don't turn my own game on me. So, yes. Good luck to your Nittany Lions, Tom. Anyway.
Yeah, well, it was we were talking about this before we hit record, and I said this is going to be my version of when you picked Michigan to beat Ohio State in like 2005, and people still don't let you forget about it. I was like, good, I can't wait to be talking about this in 2035. This is look, I have what was it, 3 years ago, the back-to-back, I picked them to beat in Iowa by, I don't know,
Yes.
30 points. and then picked them to lose to Michigan State the following week. And I was off by more than 100 points combined in those back-to-back weeks. So the week after that, I don't remember who they played the week after that, but in lieu of a game prediction, I just put a pancake recipe in our staff picks because it's like, well, I'm obviously terrible at this, so let's try something else.
And that recipe turned out to actually be for waffles. So you got that wrong too.
Shameful.
So today, Tom, I figured since we didn't discuss really or write up what the show should be about, not to, to let people in as we always do. There's not a lot of planning that goes on with the show, but we are going to talk about the safeties from Wednesday. We talked to Matt Barnes, safeties coach, special teams coordinator. We also talked to Marcus Hooker, Josh Proctor, punter Drew Chrisman, and place kicker Blake Haubeil. Tom, the biggest news for me through all of this so far, Bradley Robinson is the number one long snapper right now, replacing Liam McCullough. That's the big news. They have liked his consistency more than Rowan McCullough, and that's why he is the number one right now. And I know as we look at all of these different player competitions, right tackle, at safety, all of this, if they don't have somebody that is nearly as good as Liam McCullough, then there will be issues this year. So it is good to know that that race has kind of already been won, don't you think?
Well, yeah, if one of them is consistent enough that you have a clear-cut winner, that's great. Like, it doesn't really matter who it is, as long as the person is someone that you're not thinking about them at all during games, and the extent of their impact on the Ohio State zeitgeist is limited to like camp check-in day T-shirts. Like, yep, that's great. That's what you want out of a long snapper. A little bit of personality and absolutely no notice paid whatsoever during the game. And this is a year when you've seen a bunch of weird crap happen on special teams for a lot of teams. And Michigan had their long snapper opt out this year to focus on the NFL. It was like, that's a choice. Okay. And I think this is going to be a year where you're going to, as sloppy as special teams play has been, the long snapper is going to be like someone's long snapper is going to lose them a game this year. And if that's not you, then great. If that's not the team you're rooting for, then wonderful. That's all you're looking for out of a long snapper. Just snap the ball and don't mess it up. That's it. That's the end of the list of requirements for a long snapper.
We've also seen bad snaps from centers as well this year. And we'll talk about probably one of those snaps on our weekly Patreon show involving Auburn from last week. But there has been a lot of iffy snaps so far this year in college football. And it is interesting that this is one of those things you can practice year-round, the long snapping. And long snappers do. They practice year-round. When we talked to Blake Haubeil, though, the kicker, the Ohio State kicker, he was asked, hey, man, do you ever work on onside kicks and different kicks like that? And I think he said he has 7 that he has, but you don't want to overload your workload. So he'll practice every couple of days he'll do 15 kicks, onside kicks. Tom, to me that doesn't sound like a lot, especially onside kicks when you're not getting all of your tendons into it. You're just sort of whatever, whether it be a high bouncing one or people trying the spinny one. I don't think 15 sounds like a lot twice a week. Especially when you talk about guys who throw up 100, 200, 1,000 jump shots a day. 15 outside kicks a day, 2 days a week. That sure doesn't sound like a lot to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. And Blake Haubeil is a big dude. He's 6'5", 225. It feels like he could handle 20.
Yeah, that's always interesting to me. What does the workload look like for kickers and punters during practice? Because you just think of them during practice. It's okay, well, what do they do? Well, everyone else is off playing football. What are the kickers and punters doing? And you sort of assume, well, Blake Haubeil must just be sitting there kicking field goals for 2 straight hours, just kicking 150 field goals. It's no, that's not what they do. That's way more than There's sort of to take your basketball analogy. There is load management here. They don't want to stress themselves too much. They don't want to tire themselves out during the middle of the week. So they'll just, the punters will kick a few dozen punts. That's it. They're not kicking 200 punts during a day because you're going to put too much stress on your legs and then screw something up. And so they have to kind of be careful about that. But yeah, that did seem like not that many, like for as important as that play is. And it doesn't come up very often, but like when Ohio State needs an onside kick, they really, really, really need an onside kick. That's a really important play in some really crucial moment. So that was interesting to me that you're not doing it as much as you would probably think that they're doing it.
Because I'm just picturing the one in Dallas, the one that spins and kind of comes back a little. And at like 13 or 14, he's probably like, oh, man, I got one more in me. I got one more in me, and then I'm just going to have to call it a day. And it's just this little thing that, I'm completely exhausted. And
my
get
takeaway,
called
though,
a day.
My takeaway, though, was he's got 7 or 8 of them. I mean, you go back to like last week, the Ole Miss-Alabama game. Ole Miss had a really cool onside kick that they almost recovered, and their kicker didn't quite get it. And he just kind of kicked it basically to himself. Mm-hmm. And then because they couldn't stop anyone, they tried multiple onside kicks in the second half. And they went right back to the exact same onside kick the second time. And it was like, well, they've already seen that. Like they know exactly what you're going to try and do. So for Blake Haubeil to have 7 or 8, I mean, we know what probably a couple of them are. They probably do have that kick it straight ahead to yourself one. I'm guessing he does the spinny one. We saw the one to Chris Olave last year that was kind of the alley-oop one. I mean, and I'm sure they have kind of the pop-up behind the first line of guys. But, I mean, okay, that's 4. What the heck are the other 3? So, yeah, I'm going to be interested to see what those look like. And, I mean, 7 or 8 is enough that, like, yeah, you can put a couple on film. I mean, like they did against Maryland last year. Like, sure, put that on film and give teams something to think about if you don't think you're going to be able to do that consistently enough to use it later in the year in a more important situation.
I would also like to see more just kicking at the front line of blockers. Just kick one, try to hit those guys. That would also be another kind of onside kick where people have to pay attention to it and plan for it. 7 or 8, that's a lot to me. That's a lot of practice, I guess. And I will stop giving him grief for that. We also talked to Drew Chrisman. I don't know that we got much from him. Anything stand out for you other than he's been working, he's married, and life is good for him?
Yeah, I mean, it was the usual menagerie of punting questions and gunner questions and bottle flipping questions and all. I feel like we don't talk to Drew Chrisman all that often, but when we do, it's a very similar conversation every time. And he's entertaining. He's a smart kid, and it's it's always entertaining to talk to him. But it feels like it's a very similar conversation. But he did talk about the gunners, which is always kind of this like real low key Ohio State football dork thing that is something that there's just this certain subset of people that care way more about that than the average person. He talked about Denzel Ward and Terry McLaurin in the past, but Chris Olave is still going to be doing it. Josh Proctor sounds like he's going to be one of the gunners this year as well. And then, I mean, talking to, I think it was Matt Barnes talked about where some of the young wide receivers fit in on special teams. And there's a couple of them that are looking like returners. There's some that are maybe going to be more like blockers or, guys who might be covering. G. Scott sounds like he might be someone who's potentially a gunner of the future. I mean, they talked about how big he is and strong he is and how much he wants to go get it. But yeah, there's you might see some of those young wide receivers making an impact there as well. And I mean, they've got some of the young defenders as well. The Lathan Ransoms and Court Williams. I mean, some of those guys may find a role on special teams at some point. Cam Martinez. I mean, we can kind of keep going through all the talented young guys they've got on this team, but it seems like some of them or at least some of those guys will probably get a chance to be in that role at some point in the next year or two.
It is interesting that he talked about those guys. Well, he was asked about them, but said that Mookie Cooper could help as a returner down the road. G. Scott plays like a linebacker, and then I mean that in a good way is what he added to it. I thought it was interesting he was on Ryan Day's radio show today, and he said when it comes to punt returners, one of the first things he looks for is quiet feet. He just wants them to be calm as the ball is in the air. He doesn't want them all jittery and moving around, and which is one reason why he likes Garrett Wilson in there, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who is seemingly quiet at everything except his game, where everything is smooth. It doesn't create any friction, and it just happens. And it's, I don't know. He's built by Swiss watchmakers, basically, in that sort of way where everything just works as it's supposed to. And said Julian Fleming can really run. Like, we didn't know. Thank you for that. Could be a coverage guy, could be a gunner. But there was one other thing he said about the freshmen, and I'm scrolling through looking for it. But basically, the gist of it was that I've never seen a group of receivers overall. It was just about the overall group of receivers. Never seen a group with this much speed and playmaking and athleticism as what Ohio State has right now. And granted, he's not been everywhere. The biggest place he's been other than Ohio State is Maryland. But he has seen other programs. He saw Clemson last year. So, I mean, that's something to compare it to. But he is very impressed with the Ohio State receivers. And I do always enjoy getting the opposite viewpoint from coaches. As one of the reasons I asked Tony Alford about Pete Werner. Instead of just always asking the guys the positions they coach, I like to get the perspective of the guys they play against. And he is all in on Zone 6.
I mean, you never expect them to badmouth someone on their own program. Like, those guys are terrible. Like that, you're not going to get that. But there's like degrees of effusiveness of praise. And every time someone's asked about the young wide receivers, it's like, all right, turn the gush dial up to like a 9 or a 10 or maybe an 11, because no one has had anything that was not like, oh yeah, these guys are going to be incredible. Like, I mean, incredible. Like there is no one that we've asked, players, coaches, offense, defense, that has not just been gassing up those freshman wide receivers, which, I mean, again, like this is one of these things where you kind of get used to what the normal answer is. And there's a way to say something that sounds vaguely positive that is actually, no, this guy's terrible. There's a way to say something that sounds positive that's like, yeah, they're fine, they're average. And there's a way to say something that sounds positive that's like, holy crap. And there has been a lot of holy crap answers with the wide receivers from just about everyone. And when you keep hearing the same thing over and over, and the same names over and over, like, yeah, that means something. And that's why you hear us saying the holy crap things about them as well.
About the one guy who the least effusive in his praise is probably Brian Hartline, because he's the one who has to coach them and has to get them to live up to all of this hype. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be the guy that brings them down and tries to just keep them in line with reality. And then as reality grows, you can grow with them, but he's not going to be like, yeah, these guys are the best I've ever seen, because then if they get 7 catches total this year, people are going to be like, hey man, what happened to this greatest group of freshmen you've ever seen? So yeah, I don't blame him for any type of dialing it down, but it's not like he's certainly not downplaying them. But it is interesting to watch and listen to all of these coaches with so many good things to say about the freshmen. Tom, since we did talk to Barnes, and he does coach the safeties, let's talk about the safeties. And this is a group where it's basically maybe 6 guys right now. It's Josh Proctor, Marcus Hooker. No, I got him. Lathan Ransom, Bryson Shaw, mm-hmm. Court Williams. That's 5. Am I missing one? Because I think I was counting Lathan Ransom twice. So it's basically those 5 guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's people who are going to slide into one of a few different spots, and there's some gray area there. Is Court Williams really a safety? Is he going to maybe be more of a linebacker? You've got guys who are going to be safeties but lined up over the slot guy sometimes. So there's some gray area, but yeah, I think those are the names basically to know this year.
And the competition between Marcus Hooker and Josh Proctor is kind of the big story at safety. I don't know how much of a competition it is, because they do different things, which means they will both be used situationally or to do certain things that they excel at. However, Yesterday, Matt Barnes said this is a one high safety defense. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And when we talk to them and talk to Barnes and hear him discuss the skill sets of Marcus Hooker and Josh Proctor, it sure seemed like Hooker is the better center fielder. Proctor is the guy better close to the line of scrimmage. I don't know that Jordan Fuller was a great center fielder, but he was really good tackling and stopping everything. But I also don't know that they need a great center fielder as long as stuff like I don't need 7 interceptions from Jordan Fuller as long as he does what he did last year. Now, Marcus Hooker, Malik Hooker, back in his day, they could go do that. I don't know if Marcus Hooker can. Obviously, is that I'm not sure what they need, and what they need is consistency. That's going to be the story of this, and I think it's going to be hard to get consistency from both guys. Where you're going to be playing two. That's twice as much consistency as you're going to have to get out of just one guy. But I don't know whose skill set fits best with this defense.
Yeah, and consistency was one of those words we kept hearing yesterday. I mean, that was something that Barnes talked about with safeties. That was something that Barnes talked about with long snapping. I mean, that's just they want consistency. They want reliability. When they're looking at punt returners, they want someone that they know they can trust back there to not to hang on to the ball, not put it on the ground, not make stupid plays, not get antsy like you talked about with the happy feet. They know, and this is true just about everyone on the field. They know they have better players than whoever they're going to be playing in basically every game this year. So if they don't screw up, they're probably going to be fine. It would take something, if Ohio State doesn't make dumb mistakes, it will take something really remarkable for someone to beat them. And, in terms of safety, like the consistency there is just don't give up big plays. That was something that Jeff Hafley talked about a ton last year. Like the number one goal is don't give up big plays. That's something that Barnes talked about. That's something we've heard from a couple of coaches again this year. Don't give up big plays. Because if you don't give up big plays, then you're making someone execute 7 or 8 times to keep moving the chains, execute a 3rd and 6 play, execute a 2nd and 10 play, and keep making guys who are probably not as good as the Ohio State players lined up across from them, beat them. And if you don't get beat big, you just have to lose small, but you have to lose small 5 or 6 times in order to get the ball into field goal range. So that's why that's the biggest goal. And, I think if they got a Jordan Fuller type season where it's just, they're just reliable on the back end and they're not giving up big plays, I think they would take that with a huge smile on their face right now. And if they got a Malik Hooker season where you're getting a whole bunch of turnovers and you're getting a couple pick sixes out of Marcus Hooker or Josh Proctor, whoever it ends up being back there, I think they would happily take that as well. Like it can be kind of either one, but it has to be, it has to be one of those things where they know they can just rely on those guys, and you don't have that 2018 thing where it's just like, oh, they gave up 3 60-yard touchdowns this week. Like you can't do that. That's the one thing that could really hose them this year. So that's got to be kind of mission one.
Well, and in describing Hooker, Barnes said he's rangy, instinctive, has freakish ball skills, tracks the ball well, and does well in the run game, which obviously is key as we're talking about. Proctor can play closer to the box, can maybe play better in man-to-man. And then at the end he says they can both do both. And as we talk about what Proctor does, what Marcus Hooker does, it really has been falling in line with what Ross Fulton has been saying, kind of what he expects from the safeties, which it would be when they both play, it would be Hooker as the deep guy and Proctor as kind of that bullet who would come in and have to play some of that man-to-man coverage against generally a tight end or maybe a flex guy. And that's the kind of skill he has because he's a bigger guy. He's 6'2", 210, something like that. So he is not quite linebacker size, but he's obviously a bigger safety and can do those sort of things. So I'm game one, and granted, these things change based on what they want to do defensively, who they are facing, the type of offense they are facing. But knowing that Nebraska offense, they'll be spread out. It'll be a spread. So then who do we expect to see starting at safety for the Buckeyes in that one? knowing that you've got a mobile quarterback to worry about. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson possibly in the slot, and dealing with Marcus Williamson will probably be there. So if you have to pick a safety to start, I'm going to go with Hooker. I think he's going to be the guy. Where are you on that? And I'm going based on what they're saying. We've seen Hooker a lot with the ones in videos. So, Tom, where are you?
I guess Hooker's as good an answer, I mean, as any. I don't know that it's this is an 80-20 thing. But Hooker's not a bad guess there, because if you're thinking you're going to have, Wade, some combination of Wade, Brown, Banks on the outside, and Marcus Williamson on the inside, you put Hooker back there to kind of play the deep center field, and then that's fine. And that's probably, I think that's probably a reasonable lineup for them to roll out there. I think there's probably a decent chance you're going to see both of them out there together a decent amount against teams that are going to try and spread them out. That might be the thing you see the most. That's entirely possible. You see both of those guys out there somewhat frequently this year, just to have Proctor lining up as the fourth guy, or to help Williamson, help give Williamson a break and have a little bit of a rotation there on the inside and maybe do it that way. I mean, there's a lot of ways they could do it, but yeah, I mean, I can't tell you that you're wrong to think Marcus Hooker's the first guy out there.
Or maybe
really all you can ask at this point.
It's true. Or maybe Proctor is the running down deep safety. He's first and second down. Then Hooker comes in and Proctor slides down to bullet, and that's how you get the both safeties in there and still stay one high. That's maybe that's one of the things that they do there. There was an interesting moment during the call yesterday when Court Williams was brought up, and Barnes went completely silent and basically said, I can't talk about that, or didn't want to talk about it. Then on the radio show today, he said that Court Williams and Lathan Ransom have both blown him away. The reaction to his reaction yesterday was like, what was this about? What happened? What's going on with Court Williams? And my belief is that there's just like some sort of injury or possible illness, and we know how paranoid the coaches are about talking about that. And not paranoid, it's just they've been instructed not to. But then also in that same sentence or two before that or after that, he mentioned that Legend Cavazos had suffered an injury. And so then it's like, well, what the heck? And so I don't know what's going on with Court Williams. I don't know that anybody knows, other than it doesn't seem to be anything bad. It's just whenever a coach goes silent one day and the next day says they're doing great, I really just have to chalk that up to an injury or an illness that they're not going to talk about.
That was my takeaway as well. It was the how's your girlfriend? Like long awkward silence. We broke up a couple days ago. Like, oh no, and it was like, and this was one of those completely fair, reasonable questions, because he was someone that we were hearing a lot about earlier in camp, and then all of a sudden like went radio silence. Like, this is kind of weird. What's going on here? So yeah, it just, the reaction very much to me said like, yeah, there's something health wise going on there, and that's probably what to take away from that. But I don't think. There was no indication that this is like a season-ending injury, but if everything is as it was last year, and what hasn't been exactly as it was last year, but if everything is as it was last year, a week from Friday we will get an availability report from Ohio State, and it would not shock me if his name was on there for, we won't get a reason, but it would not shock me if his name was on there for something.
Yeah, and then like last year with Teron Vincent, you just wait each week. Is he still on there? Yes, he's still on there. And it's like, wow, they could really use this guy, but he's always on the list, and nobody will give us any answers about, because I remember asking several times last year, is Teron Vincent any closer? Well, we don't know. Well, I bet you do know. I bet you have an inkling of knowing if a player who is injured is close to returning.
Yeah, this seems like someone that you might have asked the doctors about at some point. I mean, this is just me. I mean, I'm not telling you how to run your program, but this seems like something you should probably know as a coach, which tells me you probably do know it, which probably tells me you just don't want to tell me the answer, which is fine. I mean, that's well within your rights, but let's just be honest about what's going on here. And, while we're talking about things that are a little bit like last year, would not surprise me if we saw Teron Vincent's name on that list the first few weeks of the season as well this year, as we did last year.
Yeah, and each week it'll be like, well, is he still on there? Yes. Is he still on there? Yes. Any updates? Who's Teron? Who?
Who? What?
Who? I'm not familiar.
The Toronto Blue Jays? Who? What? No, what? No, they don't. They're not on our team. They play baseball. What's wrong with you?
This is football, not baseball.
Oh, excuse me. The Toronto Argonauts, right? Argonauts, yes.
Rough Riders.
I almost said Rough Riders is always the correct answer. I almost said Alouettes. That's Montreal.
Yes.
Toronto Argonauts, yes.
They're Tom, anything else? Anything else from the safeties that you want to touch on before we call it a show?
I don't think so. I mean, there were a few kind of different things. I mean, Marcus Hooker, once again, add him to the list of people gassing up Jackson Smith and Jigba. Talked about how solid Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba are, which I know you guys probably aren't familiar with his name if you've only getting your information from this show, because I don't know if we've talked about him at all this year 50 or 60 times, but sounds like he's gonna be pretty good. Blake Hallbeal talked about he's from Buffalo, and there's always the football players talking about things. It's like, I don't even understand what you're talking about right now when they're talking about, diet and exercise and whatever. Blake Hallbeal talked about going to Buffalo and just, well, when I'm in Buffalo, I end up eating a bunch of wings and gain weight. It's like, okay, now you're speaking my language. So that was good. He also talked about how he was working up there and kicking in the snow because it's Buffalo and it snows till like June 15th. So he was up there kicking in the snow. So it did not sound like, having to line up for a field goal in East Lansing on December 5th or whatever is going to be too intimidating for him this year.
Especially with no crowds to deal with either. Looking at something else Marcus Hooker said about maintaining the standard at Ohio State, and basically, like, if you love something, why would you try to ruin it? Like, why wouldn't you hold up to that standard? And that's what a lot of these guys are doing. Just the sacrifices being made on a daily basis is impressive, especially as we see cancellations in the SEC or postponements in the NFL. That this isn't going to be an easy thing, but the daily testing is going to help things greatly. As you see, like last week, where players were not reporting symptoms before playing in games, which tells me, like, there's no testing before, like, in the immediate vicinity of the game, and you're just leaving it up to players in a sport where they also try to hide concussions. So I don't know, Tom, how wise that is to not know for sure that players are good to go on Friday or Saturday.
I know how wise that is. Answer: not at all.
Okay,
not even a little bit. Yeah, that's so weird to me. Like, I get that the Big Ten waited and didn't handle this right in a lot of ways, but okay, now there's this daily testing available. Seems like the SEC should be able to get their hands on this. And just because this is how you did it for August and early September does not mean you have to continue doing it that way. Like, go ahead and start testing every day. Change your protocol a little bit. You're making plenty of money. It will be fine. Like, because now you're running into situations where, I mean, Nick Saban's going to miss this weekend's game against Georgia because he's got COVID, and Florida just had to cancel the game. And now the LSU game is being made up the week before the SEC championship game, which means now they don't have any more bye weeks on their schedule after they were supposed to play Georgia. So if the Florida-Georgia game gets canceled for some reason, I mean, are they going to have to, like, cancel the LSU-Florida game and play the Georgia-Florida game there instead? Is the Georgia-Florida game not going to get played? Like, I mean, you're getting into stuff where if you don't have that much margin for error, and you're going to start losing games that are big games that they can't afford to lose. So that's going to be real interesting to see how they handle that. And then, of course, the Big Ten has very cleverly left itself absolutely no margin for error whatsoever. They have no bye weeks at all in the season. So if a game gets canceled, well, it's just sorry, it's gone. You'll never get it back. So that this is going to be managing. This is going to be a real challenge, and I think you're seeing that. And this is I talked to Brett Ciancia from Pick Six Previews for Friday morning scoop, and he talked about this as, yes, Nick Saban is missing it. Yes, the LSU Florida game got canceled, but also there's a ton of games that are not getting canceled. Like the vast majority of games are not getting canceled. So Cincinnati just canceled the game on Thursday afternoon, but again, like there's like a few games canceled this weekend. Most of them are happening. So it's just a matter of just kind of managing it and doing what you can to sort of mitigate the risk. And for the most part, schools are doing a pretty decent job of it. I think the Big Ten's plan is probably setting them up for some decent long-term success. But yeah, the SEC's decision to presumably just test a couple times a week, that doesn't seem like it's working out all that great.
Especially since we know when you test, that's how you find out people are positive. So
is that true? Is that right?
That's exactly how it's done. That's why if you don't want to find out if you're sick, stop testing. It's crazy.
Well, the one thing that's been nice is you've seen like these big numbers of people testing positive, and it sounds like the vast majority of them are asymptomatic. Like people are not having serious issues with this. It's super contagious, and that's why it's a big problem. But you're not having guys having serious side effects. I mean, I can't remember very many at all who've had that among players. So, I mean, that's something to be really grateful for, is that of the guys who have had it, it doesn't sound like it's been a serious health concern for them, which is awesome.
Yeah, even now when you hear a player comes down with it, you don't expect, like now I don't think we know any longer we expect it to be this, harrowing near death type of thing. And so that is good that it's just when you see it on the bottom line on ESPN, you're like, oh, that's too bad. They'll be back in 4 days or something, like, they'll be back to normal in a short amount of time, which is good. So, Tom, that will wrap it up. We want to thank everybody for listening. We will be recording here shortly our weekly Patreon show looking at the weekend of games, provided there are still games to play, Tom. You just said there were. So yes. That is good.
Yes, we do get to talk a lot about Georgia-Bama this week. That's going to be a really interesting game. That's another thing I talked to Brett Ciancia about for Friday's Morning Scoop. So, hey, download Friday's Morning Scoop at Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, SoundCloud, or your podcast platform of choice.
When are you going to release that?
That will be I usually put those up the night before. So it's like 9:30 or so on Thursday night. Probably that'll drop, and then you can listen to it anytime on the way into work on Friday or at the gym or whatever. I'm going to listen to it Thursday night. Well, you can treat yourself and just get a little confused about what day it is. That's fine too.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Make sure to continue checking out the BuckeyeScoop.com, and we will talk to you guys later.